In the Grand Museum of History, entire halls are dedicated to civilizations that have vanished. We walk past the artifacts of the Hittites, we study the military strategies of the Assyrians, and we marvel at the colossal architecture of the Babylonians. These were empires of iron and stone, powers that once held the world in their grasp. Yet today they are ghosts. They exist only in textbooks and on museum placards. But what if one of the ancient peoples walked right out of those halls and into the modern world? What if a civilization from the Bronze Age not only survived, but continued to thrive, to argue, to create, and to shape our present reality? This is the profound mystery of the Jewish people. They are not a relic of the past. They are a continuous 4,000-year-old conversation. The true history behind the Jews is not merely a sequence of kings and battles. It is the story of a radical idea that has refused to die, a story of how a people learned to carry their entire world within their hearts and minds, enduring calamities that would have utterly erased any other nation from existence. Before we unravel this incredible saga of survival and explore the ideas that made it possible, please take a moment to support our channel. If you value historical deep dives like this one, be sure to press the like button, subscribe, and activate notifications so you never miss an exploration into our shared past. Your engagement makes these documentaries possible. Now, let us begin to understand the true history behind the Jews. Our journey starts not with the founding of a city or the crowning of a king, but with a departure. In the heart of Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, a man named Abram, later Abraham, is commanded by a singular, invisible God to leave everything he knows, his home, his kin, his culture, and to embark on a journey to a land he has never seen. This foundational story, found in the book of Genesis, represents the birth of a concept that would irrevocably alter human thought. In a world saturated with polytheism, where gods were tied to specific places, natural forces, and carved idols, Abraham's God was different. This God was universal, transcendent, and, most importantly, ethical. This was not a deity to be appeased with lavish rituals alone, but one who demanded moral righteousness. In exchange for Abraham's faith and obedience, God makes a covenant, a binding promise, to make his descendants a great nation, to give them the land of Canaan, and to make them a source of blessing for all of humanity. This covenant is the first pillar of Jewish identity. It established a unique, direct relationship between a people and a universal God. It gave them a sense of purpose, a destiny. The narrative continues through Abraham's son Isaac and his grandson Jacob, who is renamed Israel, meaning one who struggles with God. This name itself is deeply significant, foreshadowing a history defined not by blind obedience, but by a dynamic, often argumentative engagement with the divine. Jacob's 12 sons become the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel, transforming a family's covenant into a national one. This early period, the age of the patriarchs, is shrouded in the mists of prehistory, leaving scant archaeological evidence. Yet its historical impact is undeniable. It planted the seed of an identity based not on shared race or geography, but on a shared story and a shared destiny. The next formative chapter unfolds in the shadow of the pyramids. A famine drives the fledgling nation into Egypt, where they are initially prosperous but are eventually enslaved. For generations, they are crushed under the heel of the most powerful empire of the age. Stripped of their freedom, they are reduced to chattel, their days spent in backbreaking labor under a punishing sun, building monuments for gods that were not their own. This period of collective suffering is the furnace in which a scattered group of tribes is forged into a single, unified people, Am Yisrael. Their shared oppression creates a shared identity and a collective cry for redemption. It is into this desperate situation that Moses emerges, a man raised as an Egyptian prince yet born a Hebrew slave. His story, the burning bush, The confrontation with Pharaoh, the 10 plagues, and the miraculous parting of the Red Sea is the epic of liberation that sits at the very heart of Jewish consciousness. The Exodus from Egypt is not just a historical event to be remembered. It is the central act of divine intervention, the moment God proved His faithfulness to the covenant by rescuing His people from the depths of bondage. This memory of moving from slavery to freedom became the Master's story, retold every year at Passover, serving as a permanent reminder of the value of liberty and the responsibility to the oppressed. But freedom alone does not create a nation. Upon escaping Egypt, the Israelites found themselves in the vast, unforgiving Sinai desert. It was here, at the foot of Mount Sinai, that they received the second great pillar of their identity, the Torah, or the Law. According to tradition, God revealed to Moses and the entire assembled nation a comprehensive system of laws, ethics, and rituals that would govern their existence. This included the 10 Commandments, but it extended far beyond them into a complex legal and moral framework known as halakha, meaning the way to walk. This was their national constitution, a blueprint for creating a just and holy society. The Torah provided rules for everything, from criminal justice and civil disputes to dietary practices, kashrut, and the observance of the Sabbath, Shabbat, a revolutionary concept of a weekly day of rest. This body of law was transformative and animals. It set the Israelites apart from all surrounding cultures. Their daily lives were to be sanctified, with everyday actions like eating and working infused with spiritual significance. The intricate legal system created a powerful social cohesion, binding the people together through a shared way of life, shared values, and a shared calendar of festivals that reenacted their history. The 40 years of wandering in the desert that followed Sinai were a period of transformation, where a generation of slaves died off and a new generation, raised in freedom and disciplined by the law, was prepared to enter the Promised Land. After entering Canaan, the Israelites spent centuries consolidating their hold on the land. The era of the judges was a turbulent, decentralized period, but it eventually gave way to the establishment of a monarchy under their first king, Saul. It was his successor, King David, who unified the 12 tribes into a powerful kingdom and captured the city of Jerusalem, establishing it as the nation's eternal capital. But it was David's son, King Solomon, who would provide the nation with its physical and spiritual anchor, the First Temple. Built with breathtaking grandeur in Jerusalem, the temple became the cosmic center of the Israelite universe. It was the one designated place where the elaborate sacrificial cult could be performed. It was understood to be the earthly dwelling place of God's presence. 3 times a year, on the pilgrimage festivals of Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, the people would stream to Jerusalem, reinforcing their national and religious unity. The land, the king, and the temple were now the tangible, physical manifestations of the covenant. For a time, Israel was a nation like any other, with a territory, an army, a capital, and a state cult. After Solomon's golden age, however, the kingdom was violently split in 2. The northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah became rivals. This era saw the rise of the great literary prophets, Isaiah, Amos, Jeremiah, who served as the moral conscience of the nation. They spoke truth to power, decrying corruption, social injustice, and the drift towards idolatry. They warned that the covenant was a 2-way street. If the people forsook their moral and religious obligations, the consequences would be catastrophic. Their warnings proved tragically prescient. In 722 BCE, the brutal Assyrian Empire conquered the northern kingdom, deporting much of its population and scattering them across their vast domain. These become the famed 10 lost tribes, who gradually assimilated and vanished from history. The southern kingdom of Judah held on for another century and a half, but it too was caught in the great power struggles of the region. In 586 BCE, the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar did the unthinkable. After conquering Judah, he laid waste to Jerusalem and utterly destroyed Solomon's temple. The educated and skilled classes of the population were forcibly marched into exile in Babylon. This was a trauma of unimaginable proportions. It was a theological crisis as much as a national one. Their land was lost, their king was captured, and the house of God was a smoldering ruin. It seemed as if the covenant was broken and their story was over. But in the crucible of Babylon, a profound transformation occurred. Deprived of their physical center, the Jews were forced to find a new way to maintain their identity. This is where the third pillar becomes paramount. Memory. They refused to forget. They ritualized their grief, establishing fast days like Tisha B'Av to mourn the temple's destruction. Prophets like Ezekiel offered visions of a future return and restoration. Most importantly, the focus of religious life shifted dramatically. With no temple for sacrifice, the synagogue emerged as a center for communal prayer and, crucially, the study of sacred texts. The stories, laws, and prophecies were painstakingly collected. Their identity was no longer solely dependent on a physical structure or a piece of land of the book. It was now anchored in a portable library of sacred literature. They learned that they could be Jewish anywhere in the world, as long as they had their texts and their community. After several decades, the Persians conquered the Babylonians, and Emperor Cyrus the Great allowed the Jews to return to their homeland. A portion of the exiles journeyed back and, after much struggle, rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem. Thus began the Second Temple period, an era that would last for over 500 years. This period was marked by the influence of foreign cultures, most notably Hellenism, the Greek culture that spread throughout the world after Alexander the Great. The clash between Jewish tradition and Hellenistic values led to the Maccabean Revolt in the 2nd century BCE, a successful war for religious freedom commemorated by the festival of Hanukkah. Eventually, however, the rising power of Rome cast its shadow over Judea. Roman rule was often brutal and intolerant, leading to simmering resentment and a series of violent rebellions. In the year 70 CE, after a lengthy and vicious war, the Roman legions did what the Babylonians had done 6 centuries earlier. They burned the Second Temple to the ground, slaughtering or enslaving a vast portion of the population. The Arch of Titus, which still stands in Rome today, depicts Roman soldiers carrying off the spoils of the temple, including the Great Menorah. This time, the destruction seemed final. Another failed revolt 60 years later resulted in the Romans leveling Jerusalem and forbidding Jews from even entering the city. This second catastrophe should have been the end. A people twice exiled, their holy city destroyed, their land renamed Palestina by the Romans to erase its Jewish connection. By all historical logic, they should have disappeared, assimilating into the cultures among which they were scattered, but they did not. Instead, a group of sages and rabbis, led by Yochanan ben Zakkai, reinvented Judaism for a world without a temple. They established academies of learning, first in Yavne and later in Galilee and back in Babylon. They embarked on one of the most ambitious intellectual projects in human history, the creation of the Talmud. The Talmud is the fourth great pillar of Jewish survival. It is a vast compendium of law, legend, ethics, and debate. At its core is the Mishnah, a codification of the oral law believed to have been passed down from Moses. Surrounding the Mishnah is the Gemara, a sprawling, multi-generational analysis and argument over every line of the Mishnah. The Talmud is not a simple rule book. It is a record of an ongoing conversation. To study the Talmud is to engage in debate with sages who lived over 1,000 years apart. It provided a unified legal and ethical framework that governed Jewish communities all over the world, while also preserving a culture of intellectual rigor and it became a portable homeland, a labyrinth of text that a person could inhabit no matter how hostile the outside world became. For the next 2,000 years, the Jewish people lived in a state of diaspora, scattered from India to Spain, from Germany to Yemen. They developed rich and distinct cultures, such as the Ashkenazi Jews of Central and Eastern Europe and the Sephardic Jews of Spain and the Mediterranean. They often lived as a vulnerable minority, subject to persecution, discrimination, and periodic explosions of horrific violence. Yet they not only survived, they often thrived, making immense contributions to science, philosophy, commerce, and the arts in their host countries. Throughout this long exile, they were sustained by all four pillars: the belief in their ancient covenant, a life structured by the intricate system of Jewish law, a powerful collective memory of their historical triumphs and tragedies, and the intellectual and spiritual world of the Talmud. And there was a fifth, unwavering pillar: the unbreakable connection to the land of Israel. Even in the farthest corners of the diaspora, every Jew prayed facing Jerusalem. The Passover Seder concluded each year with the hopeful cry, "Next year in Jerusalem." This deep, unceasing yearning for their ancestral home eventually gave rise to the modern political movement of Zionism in the late 19th century, which culminated in the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. This marked the first time in 2 millennia that the Jewish people had sovereignty in their historic land. The true history behind the Jews, then, is a story of profound resilience, built upon a foundation of powerful, portable ideas. It is the story of a people who began with a covenant, were forged by law, were disciplined by memory, and learned to survive catastrophic loss by turning to the book. It is a testament to the power of a narrative to sustain a community across continents and millennia, a continuous thread connecting a small tribe in the ancient Near East to a vibrant, complex, and often controversial nation in the world today. Theirs is a history of struggling with God, with nations, and with their own destiny, a story that is, in many ways, still being written. We hope this journey into the deep history of the Jewish people has been both informative and thought-provoking. To continue exploring the complex stories that define our world, please support our work by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing your thoughts in the comments section. We appreciate your curiosity and your time. Thank you for watching.